Hello, welcome to the EP7 podcast. You are here with Rachel Donovan and the founder of EP7, Mr. George Helou.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you for joining us. We love talking about how to get the heart into everything we do to get a lot out of life.
Whether it be relationships, business, careers, you name it. So, let's get started. So, George, we've got a not so happy topic for this podcast.
No, a tad on the depressing side, perhaps?
Yes, it is. And we've actually chatted about bringing this one up. Now we're getting round to it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are podcasting in my peak hour time where all these cars get excited about their loud engines outside my office. So it can be a bit annoying. But anyway, I hope it doesn't come through on the mic because it's reasonably directional. So, yeah, look, I have found that depression has been a very challenging topic for a lot of people. And it's because of its stigma, Rachel. You know, like people feel like there's something wrong with them because they're suffering from being unmotivated, a constantly heavy, recluse. They just don't want to be around anyone. They don't want to do anything. And, and they're afraid of being labeled, and many of them get labeled, and then medication becomes, antidepressants becomes their way to try to solve a situation that for them is very desperate, So, yeah.
So you found that people have struggled to talk to you about it?
Well, when I see clients, you can tell from the energy. They're lucky to have arrived at the session. They've dragged themselves here because they're desperate.
Yeah.
And they're just low energy, they're lethargic, very hard for them to get excited about anything. But, it's a journey to get to that level. And we often don't address what is depressing us. And we end up getting stuck at that level that I see. And it gets really hard. I've been depressed. I've felt really down. I felt unmotivated and, caved myself in for a while here or there. Have you?
Yeah. Well, what you were just describing there in those range of emotions was something that I can definitely relate to.
Yeah.
In my past, feeling those feelings. And it is really not a nice place to be.
Yeah.
You feel helpless because you don't have the motivation to do anything to give yourself some help or know it's going to feel better. It's just too hard. I remember days I'd kind of get up. As soon as my first thought of when I would be waking up was be after work, I can get straight back into bed again. And I'd just be at work all day. And the first thing I'm going to do is just get home and get back into bed. It was just, there was no motivation to do anything else.
Yeah. Do you know, not wanting to get out of bed and snoozing the button many times because there's nothing in your day that's making you want to jump out of bed. It could be a mild issue going on that's making you depressed, but eventually you drag yourself out because there are too many people relying on you. And also there's this other world which is very popular too, which is people in the habit through cultural habits. They're in the habit of self-medicating, so drinking and doing things and shopping, doing things that distract them or numb them from those feelings that are irritating them and making them feel depressed. Now that's interesting because that doesn't go diagnosed. So I
people don't realize it at the time.
I honestly believe that that the majority of people are on cycles of fighting the lack of motivation to excel in their life, to go after what their heart really wants. They've learned to play small. In other words, they'll just have a range of safe goals that are pretty good. They're just, but because the heart doesn't get satisfied, those feelings of depression start to come through. And
so what's the cycle?
Well, the cycle is that it seems to come and get really heavy, and then circumstances give you a breakthrough, a few fun times, a few good laughs, a few situations that are great, and therefore you ride that wave of enjoying those circumstances that gave you some form of reprieve. But then you're back to your default, which is the bigger picture. You're not achieving what you really, really want. That's really important to you.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you were saying earlier that there are different types of depression.
Well,
clinical.
Yeah. Rather than like different types, I personally see it as almost a degrees of intensity.
Okay.
So at the mildest form, wouldn't you say that just feeling unhappy, not feeling like getting out there and partying is a natural, mild, depressed state that's just normal? You're just not motivated to go out there and do that. You don't want to be listen to this language. You don't want to be pressed into that environment. So what do? You depress.
Yeah, and you've often said to me that that's quite natural.
Absolutely.
Depression in that stage it's natural, and it's okay to, have balance and be away for a while.
Yeah, very natural, because we have our own preferences. There are activities and events that aren't going to be what mood we're in. We may look forward to just chilling out, read a book, be with a dear friend, be low key, just connect. And because we want balance in our life, don't we? Like if you haven't exercised for a while and there's a party and you feel like, no, you're just going to go to the gym that night and really enjoy, you can do that and it's perfectly fine. But if you always go to the gym and you always say no to getting out there and meeting with your friends and letting loose a little and having a good time, then obviously there's something going on there. But overall, if life will offer you a wide spectrum of things to do, and it's your choice how you balance that and also your own preferences of what you enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So if we're not motivated and don't feel like doing something, that's a really healthy contrast that we can easily say it's a very light form of depression against something in particular.
So it's more when it's prolonged, it's hanging around.
Okay, but there's but before we get to the prolonged, there's also the circumstantial. So something could have happened that was really bad, like you missed out on something that you really wanted to achieve, exams or a breakup or a funeral. Like a funeral, I mean, that's going to really be depressing and you'll be down for a while, and that's normal. Unfortunately, I know firsthand of people who went to a doctor feeling down and they had lost a loved one and something else went bad in their life, like really obviously circumstantial, and the doctor was maneuvering them to have antidepressants. And look, I say this not to pick on doctors, but at the end of the day, they have a huge responsibility in a sense that they are respected and trusted. And so it is not cool to be ushering someone into medication when they have a perfectly legitimate reason to be down and depressed. And really the doctor should be saying, or whoever should be saying to them, what you're feeling right now is perfectly normal. Honor it. Know that feeling down, I would feel down if the same thing happened to me. Just go through that and allow yourself to grieve and allow yourself to, but that conversation doesn't happen often as it should. So anyway, circumstantial is, a lot of people understand that, and they definitely not interested in the labels or overcomplicating what it means to be down. They know it's natural. But unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid of being diagnosed for something like depression. And so they may not address patterns. So yes, the circumstances may come, but really you're supposed to flow through them. And if you have issues and they keep depressing you and they're never resolved, then something interesting happens, Rach. And I think this is where if we can have a conversation about what happens neurologically and biochemically in the body because of it, I think we could do some serious justice to this important topic so that people can start to have more compassion for each other and themselves around why it gets to a point where depression is so bad. You can't get out of bed, you can't function, and you can therefore be labeled as clinically depressed because there are no longer specific circumstances being attached to why you're down. And so I'd like to kind of go through that now.
Go through that? Let's do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So imagine in any given moment, you're just relating to everything around you from your own identity, the way you're relating to yourself. And if you're feeling a can-do attitude and trusting of your environment, there's a good chance that you're open and you're engaging and you're going to maximize people to reciprocate. However, if you've been traumatized, if there's been a few things that have happened that have hurt you, you then would have a natural reaction to protect yourself, and now you're more closed. Now, prolonged closing up will lead to an isolation, and you're not really connecting and serving the heart, right? So your inner version, as you know, you hear me say many times, your inner version, who you really are, is caught up in a version that's overprotective. Now, what happens is that people and situations may be mistreating you and you're allowing it, yeah? And you may even be justifying you mistreating people, right? Because you feel they deserve it because they did this or that. But what happens is you're literally being pressed into a way of being that's proving toxic in the relationships and the outcomes of your everyday. And it's draining, it brings on more pain. So what is the one thing you, Rach, would want to do if you're having a hard time with everyone around you constantly? Aren't you going to want to pull away?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're oppressed. In other words, the only way you are allowed to relate to these people is by a set of assumptions around what they're like, how they're going to be towards you, what they think of you. And that might be loaded with judgment and prejudice, right? And so therefore, you're also stuck in the filters of you being prejudiced because you're so resentful of their prejudice. You're pressed into that way of being. So eventually, innately, we have something amazing in us. We have this ability to go, there's something not right here. And we're not even that conscious of this. It's just the body. Something happens and we pull away. We literally depress out of that version. So how do we know we've depressed? The energy that was available to operate through that version is gone. With that version gone, we're now unmotivated, flat, not caring to do anything, be anything, make any effort at all through any aspect of that version, except to eat, to sleep, just the bare minimum, right? Functioning. So that, in other words, it's almost like there's a thin thread of energy feeding the version just to keep it alive, right? And then with that comes more purpose, which is around, well, I need to be a parent, so at least I'm going to take care of my kids as the bare minimum. So you may load a few more, threads to function there as well. I need to keep the shelter over my head. So you may go to work and just inject just enough to give people burgers, like over a counter. But you get what I'm saying. In other words, you are doing your best to only give as minimal of your life force to that version. Okay. Why? Because you're so tired of the way life is when you're allowing yourself to feel the depth of it by your life force being fully into it. So fine, you're going to numb yourself out of it and detach. Now, what happens to us is that it's not sustainable. And people start to notice we're laying on the couch, we're not making an effort to get out there and engage and have a laugh. And so eventually the pressure's on to not let your life waste and you're better than that. And because you haven't understood why you've depressed, because you haven't looked at it from a less subjective perspective, and you're more just detaching and not caring anymore, you haven't really looked at options to be different. So what happens is with that immediate pressure on you, you force yourself to get out there. Now, when you force yourself to get out there, it may give you an initial benefit of having a good time and being out there. But because those previous issues were never resolved, they come back. And now you're being triggered into the same pain. And what are you going to do, Rach, in that situation? You're going to depress again, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, damn it, it's happening again. Not interested.
Yeah.
Out we go. Now, if you were to be punched in the same area of your body over and over and over, eventually the bruising is so bad, only a touch in that same area would hurt. In other words, have you ever touched a bruise?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So can you see how hypersensitive you end up getting? That this, oh, here it comes again. And then the brain goes, we know the pain that's coming with this.
My goodness. Yeah.
Right? So, it's like, no way. So we're trigger happy not to enter that version, bar those bare threads that keep us functioning. Now, the circumstances that we were originally aware of, now this is the other part that I really wanted to talk about. The circumstances are obviously the reasons why you're depressed, but the brain adapts. So what it does is it goes, right, we get it. Those circumstances are patterns. So how about we'll take over knowing what to do with them into the subconscious so you can free your conscious awareness to other things. So do you know what happens in that moment? We literally have become habitually depressed because the brain, in its reticular activating system, anything that remotely resembles a journey back into those circumstances, irrespective of how low probability it is, the brain, your subconscious makes sure you stay depressed.
So that's the scary bit there, though, isn't it? If it's your subconscious that's doing it, it means you're not even realizing that it's happening.
Yeah, it is scary because a lot of people, therefore, stay stuck for so long that I'm not against antidepressants if someone's so desperate for so long, they need some bridge, some compassion to stop the brain being so out of balance with the neurochemistry of overprotection, yeah? And then medication can just rebalance it so you can feel normal again and feel a little bit more engaged, right? The problem with that is, yes, you feel you can handle life, but you still haven't addressed your issues. So when you're engaging in life again and now you're feeling the depth of what you haven't achieved, what's missing, what people are like, eventually, here's another part that I wanted to share. Eventually, you see, what we're doing when we have medication, but we don't resolve the root causes that led us to need that medication, eventually You see, we're numbing ourselves from the highs and lows of life, right? Eventually, nature in us doesn't want that to happen because we're not here to be numbed. We're not here as a finely tuned instrument to feel the depth of life, to go, you know what? I'm not a very good player with my instrument. I think I just need to completely dull all my notes so that I don't feel the depth of emotion. And so our highs get capped just because we can't handle the lows being so low. So at least they get capped too. Yes.
My goodness.
Yeah. So you really narrow your range of your physical sensations, your emotional states, which to me, if I lose the loved one, I'm happy to feel the depth of sorrow and grief. I'm happy to go there because that's an honoring of them, and my love for them and the human condition is a journey of loss and connection. You know, we have to honor that part of us, right? Yeah, but if I achieve something and it's meant to be, and it's making a big difference to other people, I want to feel the depth of exhilaration that experience deserves. I want to go there. I want to feel the richness of the experience of that loved one, with my connection with them, whatever, right? Whatever you achieve or whatever love you have in your life with people, you want to feel it. I mean, we love euphoria, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so what happens is that for me, medication should be a bridge. It should be a bridge with a very focused strategy to finally address the assumptions in a version that was incompatible with what your heart wanted, and that's why you're depressed in the first place. So because nature, check this out, because nature doesn't want you to be numbed, do you know what it does? It starts to undo the medication's job, what it's been doing. It starts to wear off. It undoes it because it's a fight. Nature, do you know, intrinsically, if you numb your ability to feel life, you're actually jeopardizing your life. You see, nature needs you to be connected to all the details of what's going on around you. That's how you'll be informed. And here you are going, no, I'm going to numb. It's like, you will not numb. If you numb from your environment, that's jeopardizing your well-being, your livelihood. We need to be informed. And it's like, well, no, sorry. And then this, so you can imagine these soldiers are coming in, you know, going, no, we're going to block your ability to feel what's really going on around you. And it's like, well, that's great because it was hurting me, but let's not address the fact that my assumptions that I wasn't good enough, and my assumptions that other people are better than me, and my assumptions that I should be a doormat, and need I go on, right? Okay. Let's just ignore the fact that that was the issue and I need to be different. So they block, and then my innate nature goes, what are they doing blocking? And it starts to undo it. So medication wears off. And so you know what happens? As it wears off, they quickly have to go back to the doctor to discuss whether they need a higher dose or a different medication. See the fight that's going on because we're defying our nature?
Yeah. I mean, should the medication be used in conjunction with some sort of coaching or therapy to address things that...
Yeah, you do. You definitely want some rich foundation of principles of how you relate to this problem. And one of them is you're innately powerful and beautiful and deserve a great life. So anything that's keeping you from it is a self-deception. Your brain is being wired to keep you from the truth that you are powerful and worthy. So therefore, while you numb from being enslaved to a version that doesn't allow you to feel your worthiness and capability, create a strategy to undo all the assumptions that filter and distort your perception and press you into a version that compromises you away from that worthiness and capability. That should be the strategy, right?
Yeah.
And so as you can see, your nature's trying to get back to you feeling life again and so undo it. And you know what's really, really sad? And I've lost dear people in my life who have committed suicide because the medication wears off and nothing got better, and some things got worse because they were never addressed because they stayed numbed from addressing them, right? You learn to just not care anymore. You put up with it. And then when they felt the depth of what was going on around them, it hurt so bad. They needed that pain to go away. And if they couldn't get the medication to work in time. So this is something else that I'm going to share with you to help you understand. From everything that I've understood about depression, people don't commit suicide while they're actually depressed. Because the true state of being that is depressed is unmotivated to do everything, including take their own lives. They don't care about nothing, right? But if they can't reimagine, see a different version where they matter and their life force to be released from the hellhole of the previous version, right? The prison. And then they move into like a metamorphosis, right? Like a butterfly through a cocoon. A cocoon is like a depressed state away in the darkness from everything. If they can't imagine life in a metaphor of flying, moving to a new version, and the only thing they can imagine is that, oh, wow, I'm forever going to be hurt. So now I'm imagining how I can end this. Unfortunately, the only thing they could imagine was ending their life to stop the pain. So then they get excited, Rach. They actually get motivated. And so they got a spring in their step in the new version because the pain has an ending. And then they end up telling people they love them and having lunches and having a good time. And then bang, end of the day, they're gone. And their family, their friends, they're like scratching their heads going, but I don't understand. Well, this is why they end up having all the motivation, because they have been so frustrated. They have been so deeply anguished because everything they tried to do didn't work. So I have compassion for people to commit suicide, even though it's the last thing anyone should have to do, because it's never an answer. There's always a better way to be to change your life. But this is what's actually happening. It's almost like an imagination problem when you're caught in a mental prison and the vision is so narrow and your only options are keep getting punched or end your existence so you can't get punched. So, going back to the issue of being stuck because you can't link the depression with the reasons anymore because the brain's taken over the subconscious wiring of just keeping you depressed out of habit. The good news there is the very process that traumatized you into that overprotective state, which as it perpetuates your isolation, it's not sustainable. You're not here to be lonely. You're not here to not engage and connect for love, right? Giving and receiving. What happens is that the same process that did that, you can actually go back in. Right, so in EP7, we call that personal assessment. So you get what you can measure, so how you think, feel, act, and then you can thread down and reveal the belief systems that are shocking. And instead of being traumatized into overprotection, you get traumatized out of the self-deception of robbing yourself of your precious worth and capability. You're so shocked by the lies that made you think that was true when they obviously aren't. And then you're released from them. So it means now finally through the shock, you rewire. And then that's moving into a new version of being that you're happy to be pressed into with your full life force because life is very different.
So you've seen this obviously transform people or seen the transformation in people feeling this depression to this rewiring and a new lease on life.
Absolutely. I mean, even the Cinderella story was all about that, and why I wrote Cinderella's Secrets, because I actually saw encoded symbols in that story showing that she was depressed from being bullied and never working out. And then the metamorphosis was she finally realized so many things that made her move into a version that allowed her to go to the ball. And I see people that come to me that are so low, so flat. And the moment we start to unravel the reasons, they are shocked, because it's not in their innateness to be depressed like that all the time. When they see the lies, they don't want to be lied to. But you know what it is, Rach? It's about, you can't tell a friend your opinion that the reason why they're depressed is uncalled for. Opinions don't shock people. Opinions intrigue people. You know what I mean? They oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's true. And then they get distracted. So an opinion just holds them with the idea that it might be true. But a process that gets them to see the cause and effect, that it's a reality, that's where the shock is. So as you can see with depression, it is so natural. But the people that are labeling people you're just in a stigmatized way, that you're just clinically depressed, it's genetic. I can't fit in that mold because of how I see it, right? And everyone that I explain it to, they just connect immediately to the common sense of that, because it puts us all on a level playing field, that we're not brought here flawed. Yes, we've been conditioned with sets of traumas that can floor us, but we can undo the nonsense and reclaim who we really are and get on with making this life rich and beautiful for us and others. And that's really the key to depression, that I am depressed because I've got some dumb ideas hiding in my head right now that are making me miss opportunities, overreact, and not and have a judgment on failing that never makes me have a go. Like I'm stuck there. Of course I'm going to get a bit depressed because I'm not being someone that creates cool opportunities.
Yeah.
And we should therefore honor our depression and not make it to the point where we get so lost by being the same person, go back into the same version, oh God, not again. Same version, oh gosh, not again. And eventually, I'm not going in there again. I'll just put a few threads in to keep a roof over my head, a bit, if that. And the last thing is it's not sustainable. So eventually the threads start to fray and we can't even function anymore. It's just because we're defying nature. We're not here to just live at a bare minimum level of engagement. We're here to turn on our life force into the most beautiful values of connecting and giving the essence of us and watching life create an opposite reaction to every one of our value-rich actions. Yeah? We're here for that. So this is why depression is just an honoring of the process of depressing from a version that doesn't work and then falling in love with a version that does and pressing into that.
Yeah.
And it's ongoing. So you don't know what else you really want that you're not getting, that then you feel depressed that you're not getting it. So then it's the same rules apply. So it's just like nature constantly adapts. We're supposed to constantly reinvent ourselves into another version that's compatible. And that's really what EP7, Empower for Purpose, in 7 Steps has been about, as you know. But isn't it great to see how depression fits?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I don't think there'd be any person alive that hasn't experienced depression in some shape, way, or form. And it really is such a common and, you know, natural thing that we've said, but it's just such an important issue to address.
Yeah.
And I think part of it as well is the other side of things, where if we're all aware that depression is natural or that it's existing around us, how important it is to be compassionate to people around us, because we never really know their circumstances, and even just a simple smile or acknowledging someone making them feel that they're seen, that they matter as well is really, really, I think, such a simple way of building connections and making a difference in other people's lives.
I agree. And look, when someone's stuck in misinterpreting the world as a all ugly place, and then suddenly we all decide to show the pretty, the beautiful, the love, eventually that brain is going to realize that we're wrong. You know, there are people that genuinely care. And yeah, obviously, if we create that environment for each other, then it's like creating a fertile soil for someone to sprout out and express themselves again. And yeah, so we need to take responsibility for our own depression, but why don't we create that beautiful environment for each other where it's easy to understand what's going on and then come out into a better way of being, you know?
Yeah. Thanks, George. That was really a deep topic and a really, really valuable one. So thank you so much for expressing it the way you did, with all the, you know, simplifying it to a degree to really grasp, you know, what it's like and understand.
It's very important to me, and I'm so glad we've done this episode. Yeah, so I hope if you're enjoying this and it makes a lot of sense to you, share it with the people that you know this would be very timely for them to finally appreciate what's going on for them and to get help. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for listening, and we'd love to chat to you again on another EP7 podcast. Yeah, bye for now. Thank you for joining us on another EP7 podcast. If you liked what you heard, remember to share and subscribe so you're notified of every podcast released. If you have any questions or would like to connect with us, please jump on the EP7 official Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you.